Today, I'm talking to Chris Feurer, broker-owner of Sotheby's International Realty in Chicago, Illinois. Chris started as an agent. He's now operating as an owner of multiple Sotheby's International Realty offices that have dominated the Chicago market. He gives us perspective on how he started and got to the top and the common denominator of the top agents in his office. In summary, Chris says, hustle plus adding value will maximize your business. We talk today about how to do it. Thanks for listening to the Jere Metcalf Podcast, where top real estate agents tell how they do it. This podcast is to share knowledge for realtors and raise awareness for Give Back Homes, where real estate professionals work together for social good. Jet Centers Aviation, Bentley Atlanta, Legends Global, thank you for your sponsorship. All right, everybody, this is the Jere Metcalf Podcast, where top real estate agents tell how they do it. Today, we have Chris Feurer with us in Chicago, Illinois. He is the owner of the Jameson Sotheby's International Realty offices, formerly a top real estate agent in the country, selling over $200 million a year in real estate. Chris, so good to have you here today.
Thanks, Jerry. Appreciate you having me on the show. I'm excited.
Oh, me too. So tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background and what really led you on this path of being in real estate and being at Sotheby's International Realty.
So I started in the mid-90s as a rental agent. And back in Chicago in the mid-90s, there really was no development. There were a lot of developers just putting up small apartment buildings. And I met my first client at 10 p.m. on a Wednesday or some, midweek. And he and I were both at this apartment building. I was showing tenants. He was there. He actually had a full-time banker job, and he was doing it on the side. So we'd see each other kind of repeatedly throughout the week at these strange hours. And we started a relationship. He's like, "You're a real go-getter." And this one client started building when the condo boom started in Chicago, probably in the late 90s. He would say, "Why don't you go find me a piece of land? I'll build a condo building and you'll sell it." So it really just sort of snowballed to some sense from there. And I would get another client because they'd say, "This kid's a hustler." And I was showing up at all these hours, and I'd be the first one to bring the land, or I'd be the first one to bring the tenant. And it just turned into another deal, and then condos, and more clients, more tenants. That was the path.
That's awesome. We can end the interview right there.
Right. Done.
Hey, I showed up.
Just hustle.
I worked hard. I hustled. And guess what? Opportunity shows up to those who are up for it. Done. Bye. I mean, it's so true. I think a lot of people get in this business and we get into it because it's flexible. So many people, including me, thought, "Oh, it's not that hard. Look at all the signs that go up and look at all the commissions that go out when they close. This is easy peasy." And you get in and you're like, "Oh, wait a minute, maybe not." But then you just kind of get addicted to it. But you came in this business hustling. So
I remember back in the day that even as just a rental agent, all of the calls for rentals would come in after 7 p.m. So if I was the one sitting there would actually answer the phone, then, whomever it was, they would be hot to trot, and they'd say, "Well, we want to go tomorrow at 4. Great. I'll make the appointment right now. We're in." And that kind of just, I guess, fell through to all of the other parts of the business, So if you're working with a developer, they want to know, can you bring land so that we can build a property? It's all about the acquisition. So
exactly.
At that time, that was a big, big piece of the puzzle.
Wow. And so how many years into the business did the land part come into that for you?
So I was just a rental agent for 1 year. And by the end of that year, some of my clients had already said, "Hey, go find me some land." So year 2 was primarily finding buildings or land. And still, I'd say probably a year and a half in, I really hadn't done a sale. Like I hadn't sold a condo, I didn't have any buyers. And my boss at the time, my managing broker, was like, "I don't think you're ready for buyers yet." Yeah, that was her.
You were doing land deals. I love it.
So, probably year 2, year 3 was the land, and then bigger buildings. And by 1999 or 98 or something, that's when the buildings started getting bigger. There were 20 units, there were 30 units, then it was turned into 300 units.
Wow.
It just parlayed,
That's huge. So when you got into the business, you apartments to land to buildings to basically, buildings and selling the units in the buildings. Did you also do detached homes, or did you stick mostly to luxury condos? And was it all luxury, or was it a mix?
At that time period, so let's just say 98 through 2008, probably a 10-year span, Chicago was primarily 1, 2, and 3 bedroom condos, and they range from $200 to $3 million. And really what we did, we just created a whole entire team that the brokerage we were with at the time didn't really have extensive marketing or a big platform for marketing. So we hired our own marketing people, our own PR, our own web. We developed our own websites, all of our own material. So for a developer, whether it was a 300-unit high-rise in Chicago, we actually traveled to Sunny Isles Beach, Florida, Orlando, Florida, Denver, Michigan. So we had deals going all over the country at that point. We were just a full-service shop within another brokerage. So I was essentially running a business out of a brokerage, not using any of their material or staff or resources. We had to create it all on our own, which was obviously a big impetus to
Exactly. So how long did you do that, and where did ownership and Sotheby's come into the picture? Kind of give us the timeline of how that laid out and what happened.
So at whatever time it was in the mid-2000s, that's the point where things were really moving, 2005, 2006, all these deals in different states. And at some point, I knew there'd be some instability in new construction, which we all saw in 2008 when it just disappeared overnight. So I really wanted to create an operating business. And there was a 30-year-old firm in Chicago called Jameson. One of my development partners, I was doing some development on my own as well, and I had business partners. So they were partners with the owners of Jameson and said we should meet. And this is late 2007, early 2008. They just wanted us to meet because we thought they're good guys. He thought I was a good guy, and maybe there were some synergies there. And they had owned the company for 25 to 30 years. They had no heir apparent. So the basis of the meeting was just to see if we liked each other, and we did. I really wasn't looking to buy a brokerage. I didn't know that would be my next step. And we came out of the meeting with a handshake that I would buy the brokerage with my partner.
Oh, wow.
So 6 months later, we closed on it in September or August of 2008, and then Lehman Brothers crashed in October of 2008, and then we all know what happened after that. So it was a really, really fun real estate ride from 2008 to 2011.
Wow. So when did Sotheby's?
Obviously.
Right. So that was Jane. What? No, go ahead. What did you just say?
So it was a very tough road from 2008 till 2011.
Yeah, go ahead.
And that's when we were approached to potentially become the Sotheby's affiliate in Chicago. Was 2011.
Wow. So was that a quick decision, or how did that process go?
It was not a quick decision. At that point, we were fiercely private because we had come from a large publicly held firm, and we got no value out of that firm whatsoever. And the gentlemen that we bought Jameson from for 30 years were independents. They had been offered, many, many times to be acquired and become part of a large franchise. So we really didn't have much desire to do this. At that time period, everybody was trying to buy everybody, so we had all different types of companies coming to us and taking us out to dinner and just pitching us. But Sotheby's, we were always intrigued. It obviously had that cachet from the outside. We weren't quite sure what that meant, what the value was. Mm-hmm. So we had the opportunity to be flown down to Naples in late November, which is really ugly in Chicago in November. So we decided Florida, November, let's give this a try. Let's give it a look.
Good idea. That's a good time to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, it worked out well. So we met Judy Green, who happens to run Premier Sotheby's in Naples and all up and down the west coast of Florida. And she spent some time with us. This was her opening week. She had just told her brokerage that they were going to become a Sotheby's International Realty affiliate that week. So we got to talk to her firsthand and understand her experience about transitioning from a privately held firm to a franchise. And she sold us. She's a wonderful lady. She really gets it. She understood what the brand could do for her and where it could bring her, which I think she's doing like $4 to $5 billion a year now.
Wow.
So they quadrupled or many times over increased their business. So it was one weekend. It just took us a trip down there, talking to Judy, talking to the management of Sotheby's International Realty, and we decided this is absolutely the best move for us.
So what was it? Because you had said you'd seen other companies, you'd had your experience with corporations, and they didn't bring any value. What was the value that you saw Sotheby's added, or what was even that, quote, stick that broke the camel's back for you?
So at the time, operating as a smaller firm, you have a really hard time creating the resources that some of the bigger companies have. Say it's a web platform that, like with Sotheby's, as we know, they get 23 million individual new eyeballs on our website a year. I mean, that's just staggering. Maybe as a local company, we were getting 200,000 new looks at our website, which was a tall feat at the time.
Right.
So it was really, we had a glass ceiling, probably $3 million. We had no way to reach our suburban markets. And we knew that between the resources, the brand, the trust that comes along with it, and just the ability to tap into the really high-end market, which we knew was alive and well in Chicago, that Sotheby's International really could probably do that for us. We obviously did not know at the time that was going to become a reality, but that was our idea, at least. That was the thing that got us over the hump.
Well, and I think it does the same thing for real estate. Clearly, it does the same thing for real estate agents. So you never had the experience of being a real estate agent at Sotheby's, but I'd love to tap a little bit into your experience as an agent and into what you see other agents do. And that being said, what do you think it is in such a competitive market? You've kind of given us what your edge was, but elaborate on that a little and what you think it is for other agents in general.
So fast forward, here we are, 2017. Our firm is really growing rapidly. There's in Chicago, I'm sure it's not unlike other areas, there's always a firm. The firm that I was at in this late 90s, it was the firm. They grew, and they got up to about $5-6 billion. And then another firm came in right after that, an independent. It grew to $8 billion. So we have now become that firm. We are now where most of the top agents are going. We have the largest recruiting by volume by far, and it's a combination. It's always been Sotheby's International Realty. It's just sometimes hard for somebody who's not with you yet to understand how tangible and how real that brand increases your business. So our focus is twofold. We try to teach people the brand and how to utilize it to increase your business. One example, Jere, you're actually coming to Chicago in November to speak on a panel, which we greatly appreciate, by the way. And just that in and of itself, to be able to have this podcast with you sitting in Atlanta, you're a top quality broker. You are in it like I'm in a fraternity, you're in a sorority, and we're just trying to collaborate. It's this tight-knit network around the world of high-quality professionals that want to help each other out. So there's that piece that's not very tangible when you're not here, but it's that piece that we need to make it very tangible and very attainable for our agents. And that's one big piece of the puzzle that's working. All the referrals that go back and forth, the best practices you learn from other affiliates. Everybody just wants you to succeed when you're part of this brand. So that's a big half of it.
Well, it's so true. And I find that the caliber of people and the marketing, you kind of subconsciously raise to the occasion of what the marketing and what the listings are and the way in which you do business. It's the caliber at which we do things. It's just not, it just doesn't even come close to I've been with another company and I've been with two other companies. I've been at Sotheby's the longest, I think almost 8 years, and it doesn't even come, and some of it's by like sheer osmosis. That might be the wrong word, but it's true. So what do you think though, when you got into this business, you had hustle, you had a little grit, you had an imagination, and that really put you out in front of the competition. What are if you could have narrowed it down to one thing that kind of made you more noticeable to your clients as a real estate agent than the others, what would that one thing be that you would narrow it down to?
Well, I've always felt that what we bring to the table, most agents I talk to always feel like they're the best service person. Like they're always talking about my clients, like, well, my clients are different, or I have a different relationship, whatever it may be, which I think that's more commoditized. I feel that, like you said, at our level, I hope everybody's giving great service. So where I think you can really differentiate yourself is to know more than the rest. So in other words, if you understand the product in your market better than anybody else, you understand the buildings that you know best, you know everything about that building, you know the assessment, you know that they have the best reserve, they need a new roof, there's trends, there's things that you're doing above and beyond that can educate your client. Because in the end, that's what our job is. To me, it is to educate your client. You're supposed to be the guide. That's why they find value. You're supposed to know the right inspectors to use, or what to look at at a roof, what the trends are, where the taxes are going. All of those things. If you're the one that truly gets it and you know more than most, then you're bringing actual value to the table. That's the meat of it. If you're not bringing value to the table and you're transactional, you're looking for the next deal, you're really looking to just close something, that's going to catch you. So even for my clients back in the day, I think they all felt they would kind of brag to their other affiliates or their business associates and say, well, I work with Chris and he told me this and he told me that and he told me that. So whether I was right or wrong, I was just saying what I knew. Yeah. But it was always about knowing as much as possible about what I know, and that was real estate. Not other things. I don't talk about other things. I just talk about real estate.
Being specific in what you know and knowing what you know and not being the jack of all trades and not taking that avenue of, when you have that kind of knowledge and that kind of presence, you don't need to go after the business. Your edge. I tell this a little bit. I've told this a few times on this podcast, but it's relevant to this is, I was in a little brainstorming session in our office with the top brokers. There were, I think, 6 of us in the room. We decided to get together. I wish I could have said it was my idea. It wasn't. It was Rhonda Heron's. She's awesome. But anyway, we're in the room and everybody goes around and everybody's got their creative video, or they're this or they're that. And it was Josh Reeves who said, well, you know what I find if I just know my market, like when I go into a listing presentation and I can talk about deals and I can talk about closings and I can talk about the market better than anybody else, and all that other stuff just goes away. And the other thing is, on the note of Sotheby's kind of has all that stuff taken care of, and we can come in and just focus on our market and know our market, which gives us that's really where the value is and what we're being paid for in the first place. So I love that you said that. What success in your real estate career, whether it's as an agent or an owner or a developer, are you most proud of?
Oh, that's a great question. I guess it's the fact that over 20 years, whatever it's been that I've been doing this, that it's always your reputation. I mean, to me, it's if you keep doing a good job and you're honorable and you keep your word, that's what I always look for. There's not a dollar. It wasn't really you did X amount of sales in a year. It's that you could do a certain amount of transactions and you could ask another agent on the other side of the deal or a client, how was your experience? And I would just want to know that they felt that they got value out of it. They were treated fair. So that's really it. I'd say for anybody, I would hope that's your accomplishment.
And do you have a story for us, a challenge where you've learned something, a lesson, where you've overcome something? In this business, where we learn the most is through the mistakes we make or what appear to be failures. Do you have any stories for us you could share on that?
Well, that's another great question. So I'd say 2008 taught me a lot. We went through the best of times, and then through almost 12 were the worst of times for real estate.
Well, I don't like to interrupt, but I do want to say for our listeners, in 2008, you were number 8 in the country at $220 million, and it was still a rough time, just to give us some perspective on that. So go ahead, I want to hear the story.
Right. I know it all sounds a little off, but what I learned, and it's very valuable, is when you get to a certain level of business, it is business. You know, we all come in here as salespeople, and you have a certain talent. It does at some point turn over to a business. And I think the more that you can teach yourself business and understand how business works, I just started reading a few years back. I was absorbing books by the dozen. I just wanted to understand more about how to run a business and how to deal with people and how to manage and how to create growth for other people around you. So I think what it did for me was just a self-realization of I was a neophyte, you know, for what I was doing. I didn't have probably the depth of knowledge of how to do things. I was getting by on my tenacity, I guess, of just knowing as much as I could about
a good
the
hustler.
market.
Yeah.
Great hustle, right? You know, true salesperson. And what I've learned is you can go a lot further by understanding your business side of it. So how to do it. And that, I'll segue into what our company is doing. That's really probably the other half of why we're accelerating. We train agents. We train our staff and we train agents. And that's the reason that you're coming to be on a panel, is to help train our agents. What are people doing that's done right? I mean, you've obviously bid off on this. You are practicing this with your podcast. Love your idea. There's so much knowledge out there, and there's always somebody that's doing something a little different perspective. You're constantly a student. I think if you're always a student, you're going to always do better.
Exactly. Okay, so now I'm going to try to dig deep with you and see if you can give us a story. Go back to 2008 when times were rough, or something that looked like it was going to be bad, and some challenge, some conversation you've had, some I think this business, and not that this is your story, but I'm going to elaborate while I'm at it. There's so many things about this business that are so much harder than anybody knows when they're not in it. And one of those is the ability to communicate with people effectively, the ability to have these difficult conversations without people running away or not being able to hear the message they need to hear to get them where they need to go in their real estate transaction, because they don't do that many a year. And we do, 20, 30, 40, many agents even more than that. What is a story that you could give us that was kind of like, or even like that aha moment, like, man, this is what it takes. Okay, what was that? I know you've got one.
Oh, I got a lot of them, believe me. In this 2008 time period, you're going from selling 225 million, whatever it was that year. And when we opened up Jameson, the new business that we opened, we went into September, October, November, and I think we did for 3 months $10 million in sales with 120 agents. So you can imagine the type of conversations we're having with our agents, with staff, with anybody that was involved. And I just distinctly remember that we had to be a counselor to everybody. We had to just, we were going through the worst of worst times, because this is just us writing checks at this point to work. But all those individual conversations with agents, just trying to have them understand that real estate is cyclical. And that's the other lesson that we all have to learn. It doesn't always go up, and it can go down, and it's just one big cycle. And it's how do you position yourself, certainly by doing a great job and creating value. You can do great in the downtime. You can do even better in a great time, but this is a long-term job, and you're going to have cycles approximately every 10 years. So, what have you done to create value for your clients so you're going to continue to thrive in those downtimes?
Exactly.
And it's not very specific, I'm sorry, but
that's okay. But that's a great example.
It's just a big learning curve is what it was.
Well, I think it was for all of us, and it was, I remember going through that and thinking, it's not like houses aren't still selling. You just got to be the one selling, that you've got to figure out how to take bigger market share, which probably had something to do with your decision to affiliate and or franchise, build a franchise with Sotheby's, because we already had your company, but I guess what we call that, affiliate with Sotheby's, to keep that brand, because it did make, even for me, I joined Sotheby's in 2010, and my business was on the upswing, but joining the company really makes a difference on getting your foot in the door and having that ability to take whatever portion of the market you kind of want at some point. So it's great. What is one thing you wish agents knew? So usually the question is, I'm going to ask you this as an owner. I usually ask agents, what is the one thing you wish you knew coming to this business that you know now? What is the one thing you wish agents knew coming into this business that they usually figure out after they've become successful?
Well, what we struggle with on a day-to-day basis is if you're a new agent, if you're an agent that's been doing it for 20 years, it's usually harder to teach somebody who's been in it for 20 years how to do it right. But it's always the same thing. If there's something out there that is proven to work, don't disagree with it. Don't assume that it won't work for you. Why would it work for somebody else and yet it will not work for you? I consistently get that. Well, that won't work for me. That won't work for me. Well, why is it working for all these people? Maybe somebody's been in the business for 6 months or 16 years. Why did it work for them and it won't work for you? So I think if given the opportunity and somebody can show you with a case study or anything, or it worked with this person, why would you deny it? So I can never understand where that comes from. So specifically, embracing the brand. This is where I'm constantly arguing with some of our top people. We just did a case study. There's a gentleman who joined us back in January of this year. He was doing 25 million trailing 12, so over the last 12 months. Fast forward 10 months later, he's doing 40 million trailing 12. So you look at how he did it, and what he did was he absorbed some of the things that we were telling him to do, some of the training, and he really embraced the brand. So if you go down to the case studies, look at the little details of how did he jump that far, that quick. It's half brand, and it's half implementing the things that you learn from training. Mm-hmm. All he did was come in and he was open to new things. He was open to trust us, and here he is 10 months later, he's actually working less hours and making, obviously, a lot more return on his time.
That's great. Hustle, apply, be open, learn, go to training, and leverage the brand, or align yourself with the brand. Bill Fandel always says, align yourself with the brand, align yourself with the brand. And nothing could be, and we have these resources at our fingertips. I mean, not all of our listeners are Sotheby's agents, but whatever your company is and whatever your resources are, all of us as agents have so many things at our fingertips that we just have to initiate, just take that action and implement. It's so easy to do. It's sometimes the easiest things to do that we don't do because they seem too easy to really make that big of an impact. And they do. And I'm kind of speaking to myself when I say that. Because there's so much.
All agents are the same, believe me. They're all the same.
Right. Exactly. So you were saying you're a big reader. Give us a book that you would highly recommend our listeners. If there's one, or what's the one book you would recommend?
Well, right now I'm reading books on candor, how to be candid. So there's a book right now, I think this is great for all your sellers. Fierce Conversations. I think it's Susan Scott. Don't quote me on that, but it sounds like that would be it. So the premise of the book is simple. You really have to dig deep and just be abundantly and incredibly honest with your sellers. And she has some techniques on how to do it so that it turns out in your favor, because we all know those hard discussions can go bad. Mm-hmm. But you can frame it in a way that really honesty comes out. You could feel honesty. When somebody's being honest with you and it's not derogatory or it's not an attack, it's just pure honesty of a situation, which typically revolves around, maybe the seller needs to drop their price. Maybe they're unrealistic on when they could do showings, or, something needs to be done to the home, whatever it may be. It's always something. And if you are honest and you can set it up for success, that your conversation with that person will have a positive result at the end. I can tell you it always goes down a little bit before it goes back up, because nobody wants to hear some of these truths. But that, again, is your job as a professional, is you guide them and educate them into your world. Your world's real estate. They don't practice real estate. They think they know. Everybody knows what they think their home is worth or what things are supposed to be. But think about it. They don't do this maybe every 5-10 years. They do it one time.
And it doesn't seem like rocket science, and it's really not rocket science. But there's just a few simple there's the protocol of our business, the simple things of our business. The most complex thing I would say is the emotions of this business and handling those, which comes to your book. Fierce Conversations. I'm dying to know. I just finished one. Poor Isaac keeps hearing about this book that I just finished, Never Split the Difference, but it's very similar in conversations with people. So what was your biggest takeaway, or did you have one in handling or initiating or coming out of those conversations so that they're productive?
So I wish I could rattle it off the top of my head, but she gave you a structure in which to do it. So it had a lot to do with preparation. You really want to come into that conversation. You know it's going to be tough, and you know you're going to have objections. Mm-hmm. So you come into the conversation with all the objections handled, because you could forecast what those are going to be and exactly what it is. And you have to be very emphatic and with empathy, of course. You know, you're going to really understand that this message is not going to be well received. But you have to just cut it where it is. Don't try to elaborate. Don't try to but or what if. It's just a very practical speaking way. And in the end, you're really giving them a delivery too. So, you know, in all situations, you set the expectations. Now I've delivered this information to you. Here's my expectation. And then here should be your expectation of me. Mm-hmm. So if it's all framed and there's really no wiggle room, it really, again, I've tried it numerous times now. I read the book probably a month and a half ago, and I've had to have some conversations with staff members, some of our developers that were overpriced. And I will say it's the same every time. They walk away. I think they're a little angry with me for sure, but they're angry at the information, not directly towards me. So I always follow up. And in the end, each one of let's say it's 5 times I've done it, all of them have turned out really well because the answer was, in the end, what I had to tell them was the truth. So they had to absorb the truth, and they would respond accordingly.
Oh, that's great. That's great advice. So give us, 2 things. I want to ask you, but before I do, I want to ask you the one thing you want our listeners to take away. But before I even do that, is there anything else we should ask you or talk about while we've got all of your vast knowledge and experience and all of the real estate that you've sold on as an agent and as an owner?
Well, it's funny. I definitely keep going back to the book thing because that, for me, is where the most knowledge I've gotten. Mm-hmm. And what's been working for our agents and our staff is collaborating. So, again, this is what we're doing right now. We're collaborating. We're trying to understand, hey, what does this person have to offer? But we've done all these different groups. One's an accountability group. That seems to be working very well. We'll take 4 agents that are fairly similar, and we do all this training. And then you want to make sure that if you've been trained, are you implementing it? Are you actually doing it? So accountability groups, I think, are huge. And just training in general. So it may be tough for agents that don't have a great training platform. But I think if you did your research, you could probably find ways to find people that are excellent at training. But this education piece could not be more important. You never rest. You just can't.
And you just reminded me of something I haven't asked you yet, and I'm glad we didn't close out yet because I want to know from you. You have worked. This is on the level of team building and teams, and you've worked with a lot of people. And I think one of the biggest challenges people have with teams is how do I structure it? But I think they think that's what it is. But I would bet that one of the biggest things about teams is really how you deal with people and get people engaged. And I know you work a lot with people and getting them engaged. Give us some things about that, whether it's from your past and lessons you've learned or what you're doing now, or a little bit of both.
So I'd say the number one key to anybody forming a team or thinking they should have a team is you have to bring something to the table. So it's either training or it's business. There's one of the two has to be there. You can't create a team and just try to make money off of other people. That's a one-sided relationship. You as a team leader have to bring something to the table. Most times it's business. Most times it's a senior agent that has a certain amount of business and they need some help. So that's a really great way to bring in a junior agent, and you could show this person how to do business, and you're actually providing some business to them because you can't handle the deal flow. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, if you're a real mentor and you can really convey how to do business and how to win business, it's really, you have to be very selfless. You can't be selfish in a team. Your selflessness is going to lead that person to probably want to lead your team at some point, And that sounds like probably the wrong structure for most people, but that really should be your goal. You're trying to teach this person how to be self-sufficient. And if you structure it over however many years or months or transactions that you deem to be appropriate, you'll have to modify that over time. But we found basically there's a process to get somebody up to where you think you're going to get them to. And that has to do with identifying talent. So if you identify the right talent, they're never going to be below you forever. That means you probably got the wrong talent.
Exactly.
You just got a ceiling that may not work for you, unless that's what you're looking for.
Exactly.
So, the structure is different for everybody, but I think it's identifying your strengths and weaknesses and then hiring to that where you can have a reciprocal relationship with the team member.
I think that's huge. Hiring to your strengths and weaknesses, because it's easy to hire people just because you like them.
That's it. Right. Oh, they seem great.
Hey, they're fun. They're cool. They'll be perfect. You just assume they're a perfect team member, but wait, what are they good at? Right? The same thing as me. Yeah.
Total blow up.
Exactly.
The expectation wasn't set, and it's a blow up.
So tell us, of everything we've reviewed and talked about, what is the one thing you would hope our listeners take from this interview?
Well, I'd say the way that we are making inroads in our organization is, number one, we treat everybody the same. I mean, I think that goes without saying, but truly the front desk person to president of the company, a big developer, some client who's got a $200,000 bungalow out in the suburbs. We've really just kind of adopted, I guess, a respect model and actually full disclosure as well. That seems to be a new thing in business, but I feel that the more communicative you are with anybody you have any type of relationship with, it's going to go a long way to keep that expectation very clear. It's just got to be clear. I think that's probably where we've gone the furthest with our staff, with our agents, is managing expectations, having these conversations. And we have to bring something to the table. It's like we just talked about. You should not expect as an agent to come to our company just to be here, just to have the name and a nice office. We have to bring something to the table to increase your business.
And us as agents need to be sure we're doing the same thing for our clients.
That's exactly it.
It's a great mindset to remind us to all stay in. Well, Chris, thank you so much for being here in the interview today. This has been great having you and an honor.
Pleasure. My pleasure. This is great. Anything you need from me in the future, I'm there.